Welcome in, guys. Damn, this looks ugly right now. Wow, futures look ugly. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. This is really a oof. Nasdaq looks horrible. Yikes. What did you guys do to Nasdaq? Who got shot? What's going on, Viren? What's going on, PW? Nasdaq looks just like it just died. Wow. All right, guys. Can get started just about now here. As we see right now, Nasdaq is not looking pretty. Futures not looking pretty as well. We are gonna hear from the Feds tomorrow, so we'll hear. Look at that candle. Yeah, that's a fat, nasty candle. It's not looking too pretty. So we'll see what happens. Not a lot of trades to take. You do have to be very selective in this type of market. I will say that, PW. I actually, if you saw on my Twitter and last night, I pointed out what maybe like two, three stocks that I was looking at from last night. And I actually looked at only those two or three stocks for the first, I want to say, few minutes of the market. The one that actually stood out was Moderna last night. So if you guys saw the daily recap yesterday, you saw I was watching Zoom, I was watching Moderna, and Roku was kind of on the sideline. I had it on kind of the bottom of my watch list, but Moderna was the one that I actually took the play on today. When I took that trade, I took my profits and I pretty much, what's going on, Johnny? What's going on, Julian? On Moderna, I just pretty much took my profits and I didn't really look back at the market. So that's that's kind of the day where, you know what, I don't want to push my luck. I got one nice trade for the day. I don't even want to talk about UPST, and I'm sure Avery doesn't want to talk about it either. Because, yeah, like I said, I had those two or three stocks on my watch list from last night. Dan, what's going on? Nice to see you here, bro. So, like I said, I had Moderna on my watch list. Roku was at the bottom of the watch list, and Zoom was there. The one that stood out the most was Moderna. So, I took my play on Moderna. I didn't have eyes too much on the rest of the market as I was a little bit occupied during the day. But when I saw UPST and I literally tagged Avery the moment I saw it, and he's like, "Shut up, I don't want to talk about it." And I'm like, "Damn." He literally said that he took, I think he got like a $6 move on UPST, which you can't fault yourself for that. You take your profits, you move on, even when you see stocks continuing to run, even when it makes a $30, $32 move like UPST. That's not what you want to kind of hang your head on. But let me get started with looking at some charts. Let's look at futures first. As you see right now, still, we broke the ascending channel. We're trying to find some support right now on Nasdaq. But looking at the S&P, I'm actually looking at support right about here, where we are around this 43.28 on the S&P. And so I'm actually expecting for the rest of the week to be a nice uptrend going into next week. And it's not going to be a pretty picture as far as next week, come maybe Tuesday, Wednesday. My top on this right shoulder is going to be the 29th. So the 29th, we're looking at next week, Wednesday, for some more turmoil in the markets. But this is going to be a nice little relief rally that we're going to see as we potentially make a head and shoulders. So you're not expecting to get right back above into this ascending channel necessarily. But what's going to start this uptrend is likely what the Feds are going to say tomorrow. You would expect them to, ease the markets, give some sign of relief. Now, the tapering situation, the rates, yes, that's the big picture. That's what everyone, all eyes will be on that tomorrow. But that I would expect to start this relief rally. We'll see this top out more or less. I have this going to 442. Our first stop is 437. My next stop is 439. And then 442 is where we're going to top out. And then we'll see that right shoulder start to drop off come next week, roughly Tuesday to Wednesday. How large are we talking? In what sense? Well, this is the daily right now. I'm looking on Futes. So that's what I'm pretty much looking at as far as the S&P. Nasdaq, a little bit of a similar picture. We actually had an expanding triangle, an expanding wedge. And so same scenario here is which we're going to get that nice little bounce. Same looking scenario is what I'm projecting. And so Nasdaq is going to actually push right up to near 15,263 is what I have. We're right near support of where my bounce zone is. Large account challenge. Speaking of the small account, my funds better clear on Weibo tomorrow. I'm not joking about that. I'm gonna be very pissed. They literally took 1 day to take out my money from my bank account into Weibo, but it literally takes 5 days to make it available. I could have gotten AMD, and I'm actually gonna talk about AMD in a second, but that's completely garbage. I don't understand that. But back to Nasdaq again, same scenario. So we're looking at the head and shoulders on Nasdaq and the S&P. So like I said, we'll see the relief rally contingent upon what the Feds are going to say tomorrow, but that's what I'm likely expecting. And so moving on, pretty much this was the trade that I actually did take today. Of course, I said I was a little bit preoccupied, so I didn't take too many trades today other than Moderna and entering a little bit of AMD. I had this on my Twitter yesterday night. If you guys saw that, I took this nice little breakout right around that 430 mark. I got in and I took that nice little push. I got out right around 438. It pushed close enough to, no, it actually popped right over 439, mid 439 level. So that was my one clean trade that I got this morning. And I didn't look back until I saw UPST and then I got pissed and I looked at Avery. And he said he didn't want to talk about it. But days like that where you get that nice setup, especially when you're trading with smaller accounts, when you just want to get those clean setups, you don't want to be forcing situations, trying to chase scenarios like a UPST. These are those scenarios. So that's why I had only 3 names on my watch list. Like I said, everyone's game plan is different. That's why you should plan from the night before. All right, this is a good setup. This is a good setup, and just have it on your watch list. Set your alerts if necessary. Okay. That was one. Let me see what other name. I had ZM. This is still on watch for me as well. I have my breakout alert that's gonna be set on. Actually, I do have it on my Webull account. So I have that set. Once it alerts me, I'll get in there. Tastyworks is the best. I agree with you. That is true, right? And so let me see. I know that Tamakaze was actually all over Adder today. I know a few of the TFC crew is actually holding Adder. This is a beautiful setup right now. I had this actually charted. Did it delete my entire chart? I hope it didn't. Yeah, it did. My entire chart got deleted. That's great. Thanks, TradingView. I appreciate you doing that. That was a nice little present you gave me. All right, so I'm actually looking at this little curl right here. I was looking to see if we're going to find support, which will be right around this level. My support level was going... Actually, I realized why this is. This was not necessarily the chart that I wanted. That was not the chart. All right, I was like, why did that bug me out for? All right, this is adder. So now my chart looks better, and I can take away my fibs. All right, so here we go. This is the chart that I was looking at, and so here's the one that I did get in with shares when I saw Tamakaze calling it out. I actually did get into shares. I'm looking for this level of just roughly around 1187 to hold. That's going to be the level that I'm looking to hold tomorrow. And so if that actually holds, that's where I'm going to look to see this push into 20 sooner rather than later. I think we're actually going to get there by the end of the week. call me a little bit crazy. I do think this is gonna push 20 by the end of the week, and so, but I do like this curl that we're having. We just need to find a little bit of support on this move that it's already made from 9 all the way up to to near $14. So I'm expecting a little bit of a pullback on Adder tomorrow. We just need to get a little bit of a consolidation here, and then we're gonna get a beautiful push out of this. So that's what I'm looking at for tomorrow on Adder. Again, I went in with shares, so I'm gonna hold that. Tastyworks Mobile is awful. I mean, Tastyworks is just beautiful. I just love how fluent get the fills are getting in and getting out. That's literally my go-to account right there is Tastyworks. I mean, I can't say anything other than Tastyworks is like my favorite. I have like 3 different accounts. That's actually the beauty of Tastyworks. And I'm not sure if Dan's actually tried that. Dan, if you actually have Tastyworks, you can have like 3 different accounts on there and you can actually flip between different accounts. So like how you have your challenge account, you could have it right there. How you want to have like a cash account, you could have it right there. If you want a margin account, you could have it right there and you just flip in between all 3 of them. It's just beautiful how fluent that is. But back to charting. So that's Adder. Like I said, I'm looking to see that $11 area hold. We're going to see if that is going to hold because you do have a little bit of a gap fill right here. So I'm expecting that gap to come in and then we'll get that. I may add some more shares on that once it does fill that gap and then we'll see where it does from there. All right. But 20 is my overall target for that. Now, one that I actually saw that went off as far as the algos in TFC was Zillow. This was also, which is a spoiler alert, it was a newsletter play from Dougie. This was a beautiful one. I was expecting a little bit of a pop because we did have that housing data this morning, but it didn't get that push that I was expecting. However, it's still on my radar. We did have a beautiful double bottom on this at 89.63. So I'm waiting for it to cross this resistance line, and I'm sure Dougie still has it on his radar. So this is one that's definitely going to be, I would actually pretty much tell you to have an alert set on this one because I think once this actually does pop, you're going to see this go right over $100 fairly easily. It's going to be pretty much a quick move from Zillow. Okay. The other one I saw was, what was the other move that I saw? I saw one other play. Let me see the announcements real quick from what actually triggered. Let me see real quick. What was the other one that I saw trigger? And there was Microsoft that I saw trigger, and that was actually leap calls that I saw trigger. I didn't look at this chart at all, so this is going to be probably the first time I look at it to see why it triggered. If you guys recall yesterday, we had Apple leaps trigger yesterday, and I'll give you a quick glance for those of you that didn't see my chart yesterday on Microsoft. But I do want to see what kind of trend line this is actually triggering to know where that resistance was that is triggering. So this is more what you were saying up and over. Once you see that it broke over, you get that push. Once it broke down, you got a little bit of a retest and a breakdown. So I guess the point that we're actually seeing this trigger is that it actually broke the trend line, but it went right back over. So that's likely what triggered that alert to go off. However, likely it's going to fill that gap because remember we're going to have a little bit of an uptrend to form the right shoulder in the overall market between S&P and Nasdaq. So I can understand why it triggered, but I would actually play this short term right up to that 299 level to fill that gap before we likely see this break right back under that trend line with some more downside in the near future here. Okay, so that was the other one that I did see trigger. Other than that, any names particularly that everyone's watching, look at futures. Well, I did say that we are going to find some support. So, all right, Nasdaq did not look too pretty there. A Hulk dick? Seriously? A Hulk dick? Where do you exactly see this Hulk dick? I want to know exactly where you see it. Look at that candle. Okay, I'm looking. What exact candle are you looking at? Roku? Let me take a. Like I said, I had Roku actually on my watch list. That was literally on my watch list that I had. Let me see where our resistance are, and I actually thought I had this charted out, but the chart's not there. So that's just beautiful. All right, let's see where we find our support and our resistance. I think we're just about lined up there. And where is our support line? We're looking at our support right about there. So this is pretty much what I would be looking at in terms of that, and I can actually shorten it down right here. I would be looking at for this to hold right around that 317 level. Granted, the fact that futures are down, we're likely going to open a little bit red, and I'm expecting to go red to green tomorrow and finish a green day tomorrow. So I would look for this to hold around that 317 level, and then that's when we're going to see this try to push. I did see a lot of flow coming in on Roku, and I can actually check the flow right now actually. Maybe I'll actually pull it up for you guys, and I'll show you what I actually did see. I saw above ask we have 340 weeklies and 330 250 weeklies for calls. So those are the ones that I was actually looking at above ask. Now, just in general, I don't see any put flow coming in. So you all know, I don't see any put flow coming in for Roku. So that actually goes beautifully. Like I said, I'll look for that 317 level to hold. If that 317 level holds, then I may take that dip entry and I'll go long on that. All right. Futures green as F. Okay. I don't know what chart you're looking at. Did you invert the chart? Is that what happened? I, I I'm not sure what you're looking at. The data is delayed. Okay. That's really neat. I did see Uber. Let's take a look at Uber. Uber. Wow, that was a fat gap that took. Okay. That was a really fat gap. Let's pull out to the daily, get a nice big picture here. So I saw a nice little resistance level up here that I had prior, which that looks really old to me. Right around that 52 level. We had a nice little falling wedge that we have here. So I understand why it ended up breaking out the way that it did. But that was a large gap. And I don't particularly like playing when you see such a large gap up like that. That concerns me. So I would be a little bit cautious about that. And I'm not particularly a big fan of Uber either because they just burn through cash, in my opinion. So their balance sheets have to look horrible. But if I was playing this to see any type of continuation, let's see where our near term resistance level would be. See what level we're looking at here. This will be the level that I'm looking at. It will be right around that 47.52 level. Will be right where I'm looking at. I would say close enough to 48.20. 47.25 would be that level. That's close enough ballpark of where that resistance level would fall. So if you were to see any kind of continuation above that high, above 45, that would be the level you're going to want to look at. All right. So other than that, that pretty much covers most of what we saw in the overall markets today. I don't get where you guys see super green. I really want to see where the financial cloud is seeing futures green as hell. I'm still waiting on that answer, but apparently it looks like they disappeared. Please don't spam the chat. That's funny. But other than that, let me see what other names there were that I actually had outlined. Disney took a hard fall today. What was disappointing is that we actually had the banana plotted out on Disney. I know that Tom was actually pretty excited about the banana on Disney. That broke right through. So I'm going to be looking for support near that 168 level. I do see a little bit of continuation on that downside, probably a little bit of a gap down, contingent upon the fact that futures are not looking too hot. Although we did get a nice little push back up, we're likely going to see about another $2 drop here, $2 to $3 drop, and then I may dip my toe into support there to get a nice bounce off of that. But again, that 168 level will be key for Disney to hold. Let's take a look at UPST because I know that one, even though I'm a little disappointed, I don't really want to look at the chart. But you do have a beautiful trend line on this one of the up and over. Pretty much, as you see, whenever it held this trend line, you had a strong move to the upside. It held again. You saw a strong move to the upside. That wick right there actually held that trend line, and that's when we actually triggered that explosive move for that $32 move to hit pretty much at the high of the day. That was up $32. So I would expect this to come back in and retest the support line down to that three, close enough to the 302, $300 mark. Just depends how quickly that declines. And that will determine whether it holds that support again to make another push higher. I know Avery's actually calling for 500. Pretty much that would be about a $180 move right now, which I think that would be a little bit of insanity. I wouldn't doubt it happening though, because the way that this thing is moving, every time I try to short it, it just gets these stupid hook dicks, and I don't understand why. So I am bullish on UPST. I'm waiting for that 300 302 level to come back in. I'm not going to chase it up here. This is definitely not the zone that you want to chase, right? If you did chase it today, well, hopefully you did close green. I think you had the opportunity to chase it. Granted, the fact that it pushed that $30 move, but that's not the kind of scenario that you want to be in. Big picture, okay? So I will wait for that level. I'll wait for it to pull back, and then I'll determine my next move on that point. Okay. Let me see what other names I actually had outlined that I actually wanted to take a look at. Disney I already took a look at. AMD was a beautiful one. And getting to that, I actually had CRM on the newsletter last week. We saw Super Fortuna fire off on CRM twice last week. I mentioned AMD on the small account that the fact that I couldn't enter because I'm still waiting on my buying power. And the next thing I know, a few minutes later, it actually triggered on Super Fortuna again. So I don't know if I'm on a roll right now with Super Fortuna, if I have some kind of special connection, but that was a beautiful move on my part as far as the timing, because I don't know how that ended up happening back to back weeks. So I do have a small position in AMD overnight. I'm going to take a nice little swing on that as I did plot out to expect the uptrend in the overall market. So I'm going to hold this one. I'm looking for that 105 level to hit, and that'll be the level where I take all my profits. So I'm in for a little bit of a smaller move, but over that 105 level, then I'm looking close enough to that 108 level. Yeah, right around that low 108 level would be my next level of resistance that I'm looking at. So maybe I have some runners at 105. I'll leave maybe some runners, but that's the level that I'm looking to take profits at 105. And then 108 may have some runners that I take profits at that point in time. All right. Let me see the other name that I had. Oh, this is actually another key thing that I actually did notice this afternoon as well was the banks. The banks were not particularly looking too well. So that actually might be a storyline based on tomorrow. But what I actually noticed with Citibank was a nice little beautiful head and shoulders on this one. As you see, that was a beautiful neckline that I drew out right there. We had the break of that neckline as we gapped down. So I'm expecting to retest that neckline right around that 69 level, which would be close enough to, I would say that's about a $3 move that we're looking at for the upside. And then once we retest, then we're going to see that downside down to that 64 levels where I have my support set. So if you notice yesterday, I actually looked at JPM, which actually had the same formation. If I pull up JPM, you saw the same formation. You have that neckline, left shoulder, head, right shoulder, in which I was expecting to see a nice little push back up, which coincides with Citi making that push, that $3 push to the upside. So this was actually going to push up to about mid 155 level, and then we're going to see this right shoulder just drop down to the neckline. So those two actually coincide with each other. So I'm not expecting banks to do too well after we see this little $2 to $3 push across the board on those banks. And then I may look to short the banks. Okay. So that's one area that I'm very interested in following the statement from tomorrow from the Feds. And then I'll determine my entry points and if maybe I'm too late for that entry. Okay. Let me see if there was anything else that I was particularly looking at. Anything else I had outlined that I wanted to share. Tesla, I still had this one. I can actually just show you a quick chart. I didn't update anything on Tesla, but if I expand it, and I probably want to go out to the 1 hour here. This was that head and shoulders that we actually saw. We had the left shoulder, yeah, we had the left shoulder here. We had the head, then we had the right shoulder, and we had that massive gap down that we saw. Me and Avery were not expecting that right shoulder to play out the way that it did. Hence, it was on the newsletter. And so it ended up gapping down. As we saw, we found support right around the level of 724. And then we ended up bouncing beautifully today. I'm expecting continuation. So I do expect this to get that bounce close enough to that 755 level by the end of the week as we see the uptrend in the markets. And then we may end up seeing this start to sell off. But it could end up chopping right around the neckline, and then we'll see that drop off at a later time. Hope if that gets back over the neckline, then that's gonna get a little more interesting, and I'll have to reevaluate what that scenario is. But 755 is the target for right now that I have in place. Okay. Other than that, the other one, this is the last one that I actually saw that I wanted to point out to everyone today was Google. So this is one that's actually going to be on my radar tomorrow. If you see this beautiful little wedge right here, I do want to see how this ends up playing out if it breaks the resistance or the support. If it breaks support, I have it coming down to 2756. If it ends up breaking that resistance, then that gap fill is in play right up to 2814. And so we're going to see this break either direction tomorrow. So this is one that's on my watch list tomorrow with Roku, with Zoom on that list as well. And I have the continuation from Moderna as well. So those are the four that's on my watch list tomorrow. And then we'll see how those play out. But this wedge has me really interested because I'm expecting a pretty big move right out of this wedge, either up or down. Granted, I'm calling for green in the markets. I'm expecting this to go right up to that gap fill, which would be 28.14 by the end of the week. All right. I think that covers pretty much my watch list. Hopefully, my small account is up tomorrow. The buying power is expected to be available tomorrow. I'm not going to try and force too many positions on that small account. We'll try to keep it, steady, but very minimal. I don't want to keep too many different positions, going heavy into too many positions this time around. So hopefully that's up and available tomorrow, and we'll make a nice little trade there. I may not even take a trade on it tomorrow. So it depends on the setup that presents itself. I will definitely take that because that's a beautiful setup right there. All right. Other than that, I think I covered everything as far as the small account, the watch list, futures. I think you guys can go have a great night, and then we'll see what happens tomorrow morning. And futures did go green. Wow, that was a massive candle. My God, that was a beautiful candle. So we did go green. We found beautiful support there, and we'll see by tomorrow morning a nice little gap up there, and our AMD call should be green because Super Fortuna called it. All right, guys. Other than that, you guys have a good night. I think we'll call it a night, and we'll see tomorrow morning. Join the guys on live. But other than that,